Hello, today is November 19th, 2025. I'm meeting today with Mr. Ron Kessinger
Correct.
in Fort Collins, Colorado, to talk about his military experience. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Remember and Honor Veterans History Project. Welcome, Ron, and thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you're born, a little bit about your family growing up.
Well, I was born 100 years too late. I always wanted to be in Western. I was born August 10th, 1947 in Bloomington, Illinois, at Mennonite Hospital. I was going to look up before we came to see if it was run by Mennonites or how it got its name, I don't know. Anyway, it was a big hospital. My mom and dad are Kentuckians from Middle Central Kentucky, Bowling Green, Owensboro, that area, Beaver Dam down through there. My dad got out of the service and he came home, and my mom turned 18 on the 28th of September of 1946, and 2 weeks later they got married. I don't know a whole lot about it. I asked her a bunch of things. Anyway, my dad was going to be a carpenter. He had an uncle that was in carpentry, and Dad was I didn't realize till later, was a good carpenter. Well, it didn't work out. There wasn't enough work, and so he started looking. And we had a family friend in Illinois that we treated like grandparents. And my dad knew them, and so he went up there to be with them, and he found a farmer who needed a hired hand. And so that's where I was born, when he was starting out in farming with this gentleman. We were there for about a year and a half or so, and then my dad wanted to go out on his own, so he moved to a place called Lexington, south of Lexington, Illinois. It's about 20 miles away. Went to work for a pair of spinster sisters. That was a fun. I was 3 years old, I think, by then, and but they didn't like what he was doing. He still worked out, and I remember driving the wagon with the horses, and you remember the old harnesses that they had back in the day. They had these golden spikes that shot up it, and I could have swore they were giraffed. And I thought that was cool. My dad walked alongside, pick up the down corn, throw it in the wagon. We were there. My brother was born 4 years after me, so in 1951, August, he was born, and we were there. 6 months later, I tried to kill him. It's a joke.
Yeah.
We didn't have running water, so we didn't have a tub, so we had this horse trough that they had back in the day, and that's the water. And I thought I'd help my brother take a bath, and I almost drowned him. He held that against me for a long time. We were there until I turned, I think, 5, maybe 6. We moved farther north to another farm, and now he's totally on his own. He went back to the guy he worked for in the beginning and bought his 1944 Farmall M tractor. It was his baby, and we traded it like, it was the best thing there was. We were there from 1951 to 53 or 53. I started school there. We had 2-room schoolhouse. We had 4 of them, 2 for each grades up at that time. It was a little town, even smaller than what I started out in, was 300 people. We farmed there from 1953 until 1957. I helped my dad plant corn. We had a 2-row planter, and then back in those days, they would take wire with trip knots on it, and it would hook into this planter, and it would trip to drop the seed corn. So when you looked at the field that was up, it looked like Arlington Cemetery. You could look any direction, all you said was straight through. And I sat on the back, and I'd jump off, and we'd help move the wire over. Anyway, I started in 1953, first grade. I was 6 years old. we had a big old wooden stove or wood stove in the back. That sucker was huge, you know. And Mom would give me a baked potato and wrap it up, and we'd throw it on the brick hearth and bake potatoes for lunch. And I remember my first grade teacher, his name was Mrs. Pelishute. I thought she was 80 years old back then, but obviously she was in her 40s. But nice lady, and I went that. And then third grade, we went to the next building. And by that time, fourth grade, they had built a new grade school. And I joined that, was in fourth grade there until the middle of the year, 1957. We moved actually 1956. Turned out in 57. I was 9 years old. I finished fourth grade. And I had started music. I could read music. I was playing the clarinet. I was honky at it, you know, but I enjoyed it. But because I moved in the middle of the year and I had a friend where I was that said his cousin was there and said, she'll get you set up and everything. And I don't think she liked me, and we didn't get along, and so I felt out of place. I was an outsider, so I dropped music, and I never took music again in that capacity. Later on, I did join our choir and sing in school, which I was good at. But anyway, we finished fourth grade there, and I started fifth grade, and we went fifth grade there. And in that era, where ninth grade was the end of, or beginning of your freshman year, we turned it into the junior high part. So ninth grade was part of the junior high. So we went there. I got out of that and started high school in Normal Community High School in Normal, Illinois. We had 6 different towns that were part of the school district, and we had 380 kids in my class. I played basketball when I could, and I loved baseball, so I played baseball when I could. And we were there. When we moved there, our landlord said, hey, I've got a old 1938 John Deere B, unstyled, sitting in the barn. These are the parts there it doesn't run. He said, told my dad, he said, if he could get it running, it was his. My dad was a hell of a mechanic. He put it together and we ran it. And that was the tractor I adored. I loved his tractor, but I liked that one. You know, and I pulled the rake with it, and I mowed the hay with it, and I pulled wagons and whatever else I could pull with it. And I grew up farming with my dad. I met my girlfriend. She's been my best friend for 66 years, 67 years. She's 8 months older than I am, and we always talk about, you know, she shouldn't be as old as I am. I should be older, but we get along. And the thing about her, her dad was older than my dad, but her dad took us around and did things my dad wouldn't do. My dad wasn't a social type person, so her dad would take us bowling. And I remember a foggy night coming home from the bowling alley. We couldn't see, and we didn't have lines on the asphalt, so I had my head out the window. Yeah, you're okay. No, you got to get over. You know, he was a great man. I did some work for him, and her dad bought her when we graduated. I didn't graduate there, but when she graduated, her dad bought her a 1965 Pontiac Le Mans, not the big goat, but the Le Mans, and she wouldn't take it if I didn't approve it. That's the kind of relationship we've had all our lives. And I said, yeah, it's good, you know. And then in the middle of 1963, my junior year, we moved again. This was my last move. We moved 13 miles away to a town called Colfax, Illinois. It was 30 miles east of Bloomington, and we farmed there.
Tough time to move, though.
There I was again in the middle of school, and I was a stranger. Yeah. I was out of place, but I met some friends, you know, and we hung around, and I got a girlfriend there, and she got mad at me one night and broke up with me, and then tried to chase me down. So I went out and found another girl who happened to be the sister of a friend of mine who's dating her sister, and we all went to the prom, her junior prom together. And then we went on doing stuff. I'm going to take this off.
Okay.
And in 1965, I graduated. I was 17 years old. My dad and I, we did everything. Only thing he wouldn't let me do is run the mounted corn picker or the combine. He thought they were too dangerous for a 17-year-old, but I did everything else. I plowed and disked and did some planting, and I did a lot of cultivating with his tractor. That's what I always wanted to do. When I was 5 years old, I dreamed of miniaturizing down to a 7-year-old's size all the farm equipment, you know. And somebody did it finally one day. But anyway, I graduated and wanted to go on to do something. My dad had a cousin who lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and I signed up for electronics courses. And I wasn't that good at math. As a freshman, I was. When I got out of that, they said, well, you're good at math. You can take algebra. And in my sophomore year, I flunked the first semester, barely got through the rest of the year. And I hated math from that day on. I still don't like it. I have trouble with stuff. But I said to the recruiter, I says, how much math do you need? Oh, he says, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Well, guess what? First day in class, you know what it was? Resistance and ohms and amps and stuff. And how do you figure that? Algebra. No. So I was done. I hung out there with my dad's cousin, and his wife had a sister, and she had a daughter, and she was a fine-looking little blonde. And I trailed after her. I chased her around, but I spent a lot of time with her mother. Got to start drinking, and we got into screwdrivers. And I got tired of that, and I said, a buddy of mine that was with me, I said, it's time to go home. So I went home, and then I had to find work, you know. So went to work for a place called IAA in Bloomington. It's Illinois Agricultural Association. They handle different insurance companies, companies being one of them. I started out in the stock room. And I met a kid there. He was 8 months younger than me and showed me the ropes, and my boss was great, and we had a lot of fun. And then I got to be mail boy. So I'm running all theirs up and through all the different floors and offices and stuff, and met his soon-to-be wife there. Her name was Bonnie. His name was Gary. And we hung out and stuff, and then I got in trouble and was told, well, I moved on to another job up on the second floor, stuffing envelopes automatically with a stuffer to send the notices out for payment. And I did that until I left there. But I got in a little bit of trouble with the law, and they said either you go to the military or you're going to end up in jail.
Oh, geez.
And I said, well, I'm not going to jail. And so I started looking around, and I decided I was going to be in the National Guard. You know, that's a cheap way, a chicken way to get out of service, but I was still going to do it. And on my 19th birthday, 1966, I came home from work, and my mother met me on the back porch with this letter and said, welcome to your new travel orientation, or something to that tune. Welcome aboard. She didn't like it. And I said, what the hell? So I boarded the bus, went to Chicago, Illinois, to the recruiting station. We called it the stockyards, and I think every recruiting station was still the same way. They run you through like cattle. And I did my physical and all that, and went home. And then the 19th or 18th of September, we went back up there, and we were sworn in. And while we were there, there was probably 250 of us there. It was a funny story. We had 2 or 3 Spanish-speaking gentlemen there, and they'd go, no comprende. And the guy that was giving us the test and stuff was a Navy petty first class or what it was, you know. And he goes over and says, okay, he says, can you sign your name? You go, sí, so it's a sign here. So he says, congratulations, you're in the military. Oh, they just screamed and hollered. I thought it was funny. So, all right, he said, we're going to swear you in. So they swore us in. He said, all right, we need so many men for the Marines. And nobody volunteered. So there was 4 lines of us. however many deep, He says, these 2 rows, you guys are Marines. All right, we need somebody for Air Force. Nobody spoke up. All right, this row, you're Air Force. All right, we need somebody for Navy. No, again. So, all right, these 2 rows are Navy. The rest of you are Army. And we were done. I got on the train.
You were in the Army?
I was in the Army.
Okay.
I'm in the Army now.
Yeah.
I'm not behind the plow. I'm digging a ditch. Anyway, we boarded the train, and our basic destination was Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We showed up there, and I did 8 weeks of basic training.
And how was that transition for you going from civilian life into military life? Was that much of a...
It was a kick.
Oh, was it?
I mean, once I got there and we were doing things, it became tough. I wasn't used to being told what to do and when to do it and how to do it.
Right.
And standing in this line and pick your butts up off the ground. And to this day, I don't like standing in lines because of it. But I got through it. We had my drill sergeant, name was Sergeant Garrett. He stood 5'3", short, but he was a tough SOB. And the platoon next to us, he was a big guy. He thought he could rule the roost. And we were into hand-to-hand and pugy sticks, and everybody knows what those were. And this guy challenged my sergeants to a pugy battle, and that was a mistake. Sergeant Short, he got the blows in. He beat the crap out of this guy, and he turned out to be a real nice guy after that. And that was fun. Get up at 5 a.m., fall out, do our thing, have our lunch. I don't remember all the stuff other than PT, climbing the wall, doing push-ups, and getting on the ground, and crawling underneath concertina wire and that kind of stuff. It doesn't hit my mind much anymore.
Yeah.
There was no real thing other than the physical training and stuff. We did do what they call visual sighting. We had 5 guys at a time at a stylus with a pointer that you could point, and there'd be riflemen out in front of you about 100 yards, and you'd watch to see where the puff of smoke came from, and you'd pinpoint it. And I was aced on it. I could do that just fine. And then we started with the sound. In 1961, I lost my hearing in my left ear because of mumps, so I was deaf in that ear. And I couldn't find it. I couldn't tell you. I had no stereo ears. And he says, "What's going on?" I said, "I can't hear it." "Why?" I said, "I'm deaf in this ear." He says, you can get out of here." He says, "You don't need to be here." He says, "Go to the dispensary, tell them what's going on." He says, "Get out." Well, I said, okay, and I walked down there. Well, by the time I had an ear infection in my good ear, and that was not going to help matters. So I turned around and said, "No, I'm staying. I'll muck through this any way I can." And I did. We went out on bivouac. That's, you take your tents and your platoons all go out and you get together. And we had one kid on our platoon, our squad, that thought he was great dippies, or whatever you want to call it, because he became acting corporal. And to a young kid, that kind of stuff, with anybody, it goes to their head. And he thought he was the shit's end. And we didn't think so. So we, on our way out, we talked to our sergeant, and we said, "If we have a blanket party, will you say anything?" He said, "As long as I don't hear about it." So we took this kid, and we didn't beat him, but we wrapped him up in a blanket, and we wailed on him a little bit and let him go. And let me tell you, that changed his attitude right away. He became just like the rest of us. You didn't let this go to the head. One thing I do remember was we had to do tear gas training.
Oh.
You get in a cinder block building that's sealed tight. You go in with a gas mask on, and then you have to pull it off, and you've got 33 seconds to name your name, rank, serial number, your date of birth, and your social security number. A lot of people couldn't do it. I aced it. I was good with numbers like that back then. I still know all that stuff to this day. I even know my driver's license number, but I have to think about it a little bit. We did that, and then we did our rifle training, and I became an expert marksman with a M14 rifle. Never did use it. Christmas came. I came home for Christmas, and then I took the train to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, which is by Bixby, or it is, I think it is. What I was there for, I had no idea.
Huh.
But I got there and they said, well, we're going to put you in a lineman's class. And then they found out I was deaf in one ear, and you have to have what they call an A profile. Why an A profile to be a stupid lineman, I don't know.
Lineman to string wire?
String wire,
Okay.
yeah. Put the poles up, and, like they do today. I mean, it's a dangerous job today especially, but then, and so they had nothing for me to do. And this was in November, and in December, Christmas came around, and I went to the PX to buy something to take home, and I found this belt I fancied. It had a cowboy buckle, and I put it on, to try it on, and I was looking at those things, and I forgot I had it on. I walked out the door, and the MPs grabbed me, and you're going to jail, buddy. I said, why? You stole. I said, oh no. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I forgot it had it on. I didn't mean to do that. So they let me go. And I went home for Christmas on the slow train to China. We stopped at every stop that there was. We transferred trains in Memphis, Tennessee, and went up to Chicago. I got on a bus and went down to Bloomington, Illinois. My mother picked me up. I did my thing. I was home for, I think, 2 weeks. And then I went back to Arizona. And my dad took me north, or we lived there in Bloomington, to Oglesby, which is outside of Peru, LaSalle, Illinois. It's west of Chicago. And I got on the train there. Well, okay, I got 36 hours of this, blah, blah, blah. And in 23 hours, I was back in Arizona. It was a fast passenger. It didn't stop for anything. I got off there, checked in. Well, first of all, the guys that came back, they were told when to come back not to go to war, go across the border. I can't remember what it was, Juarez or what it was without looking up, but they didn't listen. And I got back there, and all their mattresses were out on the ground. I go, what's going on? Well, they went to Mexico when they were supposed to, and they brought something back they wasn't supposed to.
Oh, boy.
I checked in, and they said, all right, you're going to be punished. That's what we're going to do. He says, you're going to move these rocks from this side of this driveway over to this side of this driveway. Okay. Then when you're done, you're going to move those rocks all back over there again. Well, I had to do that 3 times. And then besides that, they made me paint the quartermaster or the commander's office.
So were you getting in trouble with these guys because of what these guys did? Or?
No, what I did before.
Okay.
The MPs.
Oh, okay.
They thought I was stealing. That was my punishment for,
okay.
not having to go to jail, go to the brig and stuff. And I did that until January, and then they said, okay, we found a place for you. We don't know exactly what's going to work out, or anything, but we're going to send you to Fort Benjamin Harrison, training company in Indianapolis. I was okay. So I flew to Indianapolis, and I got there, and we started out in records clerk, which, what they do is they do your records. I learned all the aspects, and they said, okay, how about we train you in finance and pay stuff? Okay, we can do that. And I did that until I think it was February or early March. And then they shipped me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for my special AIT. And I continued my finance education there. And then Christmas came around. I went home for Christmas. I don't remember what year it was now. But when I came back, because I had been drinking with my cousin's sister, gin did not sit with me. And I came back and walked into the barracks and I said, all right, who's got the gin? Oh, we don't have any gin here, they said. And I said, you're full of shit. Sorry about my language. But I walked over and opened the locker door, and there it was. How'd you know? I says, because I got drunk on it, and I says, it just makes me sick. So I did that. And then I went on and finished my training there. And for fun, I had some groups that we ran around with. And I met a girl there who was the same age as my fiance was. I forgot I mentioned her. I was going to get married when I got home, but I tried to get a little extra before I went to Vietnam, and she said no, which was probably a good thing. But anyway, I met this girl. Her dad was a staff sergeant in my company. Oh, talk about, walking on eggshells. But we got along fine, and we had a outdoor roller skate rink. And I go down and we roller skate, and we would watch the perimeter and make sure everything's going right. And we had a couple guys that were giving us a bunch of stuff, and pretty soon I hear, "Psst, hey, you, come here." And I turned around, and there was 4 black guys standing outside the fence. All right, what are we getting into? He says, so I always says, "What's up?" He says, "You having trouble with them guys?" I said, "Nothing we can't." I said, "If you do, just let us know." He said, "We'll take care of it." I'll tell you what, I trust those people more with my life than I do a white man.
Huh.
They were not what you normally think of. They were very polite, and I would have put my life out for them if I had ever had to. We did that, and then it came time for me to move on. And I hated spit and polish. And I know most of the guys didn't like all the trimmings and fallout and inspections and standing in line and polished boots and brass buckles. And so I said, I'm going to volunteer for Vietnam.
Really? Huh.
And I told my dad, and he didn't like it.
Yeah, particularly
because
his experience.
His experience.
Yeah.
He was on the USS North Carolina in World War II, the whole duration of the war in the South Pacific. It was called the showboat because when it was doing trials out of New York Harbor, people would line up to see it come in and out, so they made it called a showboat. And when Pearl happened, they waited for the showboat to show up at Pearl.
Uh-huh.
And Dad was on that ship for 3 years. Their ship escorted the Enterprise aircraft carrier everywhere it went, got hit, and they still maintained speed with it until they went back to be fixed. And my dad didn't talk much about his experience other than that he was in Signal Corps, and he has also fed the shells to the gunny on the side of the ship. I don't remember what gun he was using, 50 cal or 20 cal or whatever it was, but he got in trouble because he wasn't feeding the ammo fast enough. And then he got hit by shrapnel by an incoming shell. And he told me about that, and he told me about standing on deck and taking signals, flag signals from another ship, and he had to turn it over to one of his other buddies because it was telling them that his dad had passed away. And I thought this was before the war was over, but actually it was 8 days or 5 days after the war the armistice was signed in September of 45. Mm-hmm. So, but he couldn't go home because you're out in the ocean on a ship, right. And he was angry about that till the day he passed away. Mm-hmm. His brother got to go because he was in the Army on land. But anyway, I told Dad where I was going, and he said, "No, you're not going." I said, "Dad, I don't like being in the States," and I said, I'm going to be okay. And so I was home for, I don't remember how many days. Some guys got 30 days. I don't remember what I got, but I was home, and then I went to O'Hare on a DC-3 turboprop. Nice little one. I love those things. Got on an airplane there at O'Hare, and I flew to SeaTac in Washington, and then I have a cousin that's 7 years younger than me. We're very, very close. Her and her husband lived on Mercer Island in Washington. They came and picked me up, and I stayed with them for 4 days. And then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, to get ready to go. And I don't remember what we did while I was there, but came time to leave. We went to McCord Air Base, and we flew out. This was September 16th or 17th of 1967. We landed in Anchorage for fuel. We landed in Okinawa for fuel. We landed in Honolulu for fuel. We landed in Japan for fuel. They wouldn't let us off any places because they knew most of them would probably skip, especially in Japan, which is fine. And then we flew out and landed in Cam Ranh Bay, which is north of Saigon, right on South China Sea. I checked in, and they said, "Well, we don't have a place for you yet."
How is that? Every time I ever talk to a Vietnam vet, when you landed and they opened that door?
The heat.
The heat, yeah.
Now
The
you got
smell,
to understand, Illinois was 97%
Right.
humidity, and we had 100-degree heat.
Yeah.
It hit me. I got used to it really quick.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And even while I was over there, it didn't bother me.
Really? Okay.
But I was there for 2 weeks, and finally, and I was drinking beer and watching movies and running around with some friends, and I finally said, I got to check. They probably think I'm AWOL. And I walked in. We've been looking for you. And I said, that's bull. I said, you knew where I was at. Oh, you come find me. All right, well, it says, we got your orders. You're going up to Tuy Hoa, Vietnam, which is between Nha Trang and Da Nang. But he says, get your bag. C-127 is out there waiting for you. And I got on the plane, and we took off. Well, the first place we went was Pleiku, which is 100 miles inland from where I was going. My bag got off, and I didn't.
Oh, no.
And we got to Tuy Hoa, and I got off, and it was 6 weeks for my bag showed up. So I had to go to the PX and buy clothes and all that stuff, And I said, where's my weapons? Oh, you don't get it. I asked him that before I ever got on the plane to go up there. And said, well, why? I figured out later because of where I was at, what I was doing. I wasn't in combat. I probably didn't need it. But I said, that's bull. So when I got there, I found my own flak vest, found my own helmet, and I met a kid. There we became good friends. He had a .38 Smith & Wesson Special with a holster, and I bought it for $15. A lot of money even for us. And I wore it. And we'd go into Tuy Hoa town on Sundays because we like to hang around, and I like to browse the shops. Excuse me. We ended up meeting a couple Vietnamese twin girls, sweetest as could be. I think they were 9 years old or something like that. They're in their 60s now, if they're alive. But we buy them shoes. Always buy them shoes. And I know what they do is they would sell them to their family or give them, I didn't care. None of us really cared, I liked the culture. I enjoyed that.
Well, was there any worry when you would go into town? I mean, your war was much different from your dad's war, where in his war, they could say, okay, 6 clicks up the road, that's the front line. But here, you didn't know who friend or foe was. I mean,
exactly. And to be honest, I was so stupid and dumb that it never registered with me because of where I was. I knew I wasn't out in the bush,
yeah, but
so I didn't. I mean, I was still kind of cautious. But it didn't scare me. It didn't really bother me that much, But you're right. You didn't know who was friend or foe because they all wore pajamas. We called them Papa Sons and Mama Sons. And they could be your friend in the daytime and shoot at you at night.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, we went to town one afternoon, and we were all I wasn't a pothead, but we had 6 or 7 guys who were potheads. And one, his name was Gary Rose. He wore rose-colored glasses, and he was a toker from the beginning. And we were going to town, and he said, Ron, take a toke. And I said, no, I don't. He said, oh, come on. So I got up, and I stumbled, and I didn't have my pistol latched, and it fell out.
Oh, no.
And of course, I stumbled. He thought I took a toke. He thought I was already high. Well, that's not possible, even if you've never done it before. But anyway, I go back to the barracks, and I talked to Steve. His name was Steve Bishop. I don't know where he's at today, but he was one of my best friends there. But I said, Steve, I need another gun. What do you got? So I ended up with an AK-47 with 2 30-round banana clips banded back to back. That's what I had. And I was there when Tet happened in January of '68.
Oh, wow.
But there again, I don't think I was really concerned that much because we had our base and then we had the Air Force base, and on the other side of the Air Force base, they had the firefights, but we didn't really have it. And we had the Cobras come down the beach at night running tracers. We had a village to the north and a village to the south and one to the west of us. That was our perimeter. And I had the South China Sea out in front of me, for 358 days. But I said to myself, if they break through, I got 60 rounds and I'm gone. Thank the good Lord they never got in.
Wow.
We did have a Mama San in the barracks next, I think barracks are the next one next to us, that everybody liked. But talking about you didn't know who was enemy and who wasn't, she planted a satchel charge in the doorway, and one of the guys found it, and they executed her on the spot. On the spot.
Wow.
Didn't take her out, even take her out of the compound. Just shot her right there. Because, we trusted her. And so we started paying a little more attention to that kind of stuff around us, But,
talk a little bit about the condition of the base, your living condition, sleeping, the food, just stuff like that. What was daily life like, I guess, on that base?
I thought it was a kick in the ass.
Was it?
I did my job.
Yeah, and you were in finance there?
I was in finance, yeah. My job as a records clerk was to process new people in and old people out, and I ended up having to process the dead records out, which I had 3 of them I had to do, and it really got to me.
Sure.
One of them was a medevac helicopter pilot. It was a warrant officer. I can't remember these guys' names, but he could fly a med with the skids 2 inches off the ground, full tilt, and never touch. And he went out on a mission to pick up wounded and was shot down. And his CO, Lieutenant Colonel, went out to find him, and he was shot down. So I had to process their records to send their bodies home. And that really bothered me.
Sure.
Our barracks were Quonset huts. We had there was 27 of us, I think, in our deal, and we all lived in the same barracks. Our office was a wooden structure. It was a 2-story structure. I don't even know what was up above. We started out mess eating out of the hospital mess because we went to our mess and we didn't like the food. So a bunch of us started going to the hospital mess, and it was better food. And it was fine until one of the guys messed up and got us kicked out. So for the next 8 months or so, I had to go to the PX and eat. And I had hot dogs and beer. That's all I had for the rest of the time I was there.
Huh.
When I got there, I weighed 180 pounds. When I left there, I weighed 136 pounds. My mother didn't recognize me when I came home from Leonard Wood. She didn't recognize me when I came home from Vietnam.
Huh.
But, we didn't have a lot of entertainment other than our own playing cards, listening to music stuff. And I bought a guitar, and I played guitar while I was over there.
Picked up your music.
Went out and bought a Tiki reel-to-reel tape player, and then I recorded stuff and played that. I was the only one that had one. My dad sent a little small cassette reel-to-reel of him and my sister singing a song, and unfortunately I've lost it, so I have no record of them. She was 5 years old. My dad was 42 feet or something like that. But I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
I sold the tape player when I came home.
Yeah.
Funny thing was, we had a sergeant. He was FS7, and he was a recruiter out of Las Cruces, New Mexico. I think his name was John or something like that. I says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Oh, I had to come and see what the fun was about." He was already 45 years old in 1968. Character, you wouldn't imagine what he was. And he was always trying to outsmart us, outdo us, and he had this thing to see who was the bravest. He would take a dollar bill and wrap it around his arm and poke a hole through it with a cigarette. And whoever blinched lost. He never blanched. He had cigarette marks all up and down his arm. He was wild.
Huh.
We went swimming in the ocean every day. We could walk out a half a mile chest deep. And then one day we had 2 LSTs come in. If you know what they are, they're small landing craft.
Yeah.
And they got great big propellers. Well, they beached them. And when they go to leave, they couldn't get off the beach. Well, first of all, I'm not a swimmer. If you throw me in, I'll drown. I float like a rock. But being it's salty, the deck was 8 feet off the water. The rail was another 4 feet. And I got up and I dove in. And that was cool. Hey, I can do this, And the next time I dove in, I about broke my neck. My head got buried in the sand. I'm done. And they got ready to leave, and they couldn't unbeach, so they churned and they tore up that whole area. You couldn't walk 10 feet without dropping 30 feet. That's how much they destroyed that beach, and I hated them for doing that. You know? I was there. I had 3 months left to go, and so it was time for them to bring my replacement in for me to train them, and that took a while. And my sergeant come to me one day and he says, "Why don't you re-up?" I said, "No, but I'll tell you what I will do. If I can go to the PX and I can get my S4, S5 stripes and start over," he said, "I'll do it." "No," he says, "you got to go back to Cameron to your main base." Then I says, "Go to hell, I'm going home in 3 months, out of here." To my relief, I did the right thing. But I would have if I thought I had more time. Just my soon-to-be brother-in-law was in for 3 years. He enlisted, and he spent a lot of time in Paris, France, in the circle. And he was a S5. I wanted to be the same rank in 2 years, what it took him 3 to do, was the reason why I considered it, but I wasn't going to go through that. So I got home, and, I trained this guy, and I had nothing else to do. So I went down to the motor pool, and I said, "Hey, I want to drive one of these trucks." "Well, you have to get a license, even in the military." So even though I'm deaf, I got away with it. And I drove a 2.5 and a 3/4 ton everywhere for 3 months. Sarge come to me one night in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, go out to the air base and pick up this music group and take them to the NCO club on our base." I said, "Okay." So I took a friend with me, got in the 3/4 and went out there, and I picked up this band. They were from Australia. And the lead singer was married, one of the girls was married to one of the guys in the band, and the lead singer was single. And I put the guys in the back, and I put the girls in front with us. We're packed. And the stick shift is like this. So the girl had a skirt on, and I'm shifting between her legs. And she's laughing and carrying on. We had a good time. Out there, and I ended up going to Penang, Malaysia, which I enjoyed.
This is for your out-of-country
For
R&R?
my R&R. But I did that, and that's how I'd run the truck around and everything. And then came the time to come home, and I said, "Okay." I said goodbye to everybody, and I got on the C-130, and we went to Cameron, got on that plane. I was going to take my AK with me, and they said you have to lead the barrel. I thought, well, if I lead the barrel, it's going to ruin it. And I'm not, into metallurgical stuff. I didn't realize lead melts and comes right out. I should have done it because I'd still have that today.
Oh, man.
But I left it behind. Got on the bird, and the minute the wheels were off the ground, the bird said, "Hooray!" And we were gone.
Oh, boy. Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine that feeling.
I left everything behind that day. I don't remember. I don't know where anybody is. I hope that everybody has made it through, and I know most of them are probably not around anymore. I feel very fortunate that I am here. Even though my dad didn't like where I was going, I was proud to be there and do what I had to do. And while I was there, we had an incident going to town one day, and we didn't wear our hats. We were supposed to wear, and I wore, the floppy beret type hat. I didn't like the others, and we didn't have them. And the MPs accosted us and was going to haul us away, and I talked them out of it, but I got all their names, and I went back to base and I looked up their records. Like I said, I'm in finance. I wasn't cruel about this, but I'll tell you, I put them in their place. I looked up all their records, and they're allowed to draw on their pay. I think we made $225 a month, if I remember right. So if they take $150, what do they got left coming? And I took every dime they had, And then all of us with nothing. And they'd come crying, what are we going to do? And I says, hey, you took this advance. You took 2 advances. In fact, you're $300 over. And I took it. Well, what are we going to do? I said, we got to live. And I smiled and very politely I said, look, guys, we had this little incident. And I says, we need to have a little conference here. But I says, if I get what I want out of you in respect for us, I said, I know that I can correct this. And I gave them back half of what they had out, and they were happy.
Huh.
Money does a lot of things. The other incident in this was our commander was a captain, and his driver came in from doing something, and right behind him came this sergeant, first class, whatever, screaming and hollering, who just came in here from that Jeep? And we pointed out, why? Well, they just went by and splashed me and my colonel, or my general, I guess it was. We're going to get after them. And I said, no, you're not. I said, sit down. And so, there again, I got their records. Now, an officer is allowed what they call BAQ, basic allowance and quarters. You can't take it from them, but I did. And he came in on his knees crying, and I says, okay. I says, I didn't like the way your driver came in yelling at us. I said, this doesn't happen here. I said, you'll have to go through me first. I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to stand there in front of all the rest of us, and you're going to apologize to my captain, and I'll fix it. And I did. And everything was good after that. I wasn't, my wife said not to tell that story because, it's not good, but it wasn't vicious. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I was trying to get some respect from people. I try to respect her. I don't always do it myself, but I try to be nice to everybody I ever meet. At home, I'm a different guy. I'm a badass, but we've worked to it. But anyway, so I went home, flew into McCord, went to Fort Lewis, and I, being records clerk, I had to process everybody that was on that plane out. There were 3 of us that did it. And we had 250 guys on the plane.
Oh, geez.
Took us 3 days to do that.
Man.
When we left Tuy Hoa, it was 130 degrees in the shade, and at night it got to 75, and you froze to death.
Yeah.
We got to Seattle, it was 63 degrees, and I got a cold immediately. Where are we at now? What do you want to ask me?
You're getting towards the end of being a muster.
Oh, yeah. When I came home, I de-roasted. I was done. That was the end of my military experience.
You didn't have anything left on
No.
when you got back?
No,
mustered?
I was 2 years, and I burned every day of it.
Yeah, okay.
So I came home, and I got on a plane and came home. But I did, help process the guys out. And then I went to SeaTac, talked to my cousin, and visited him for a day, and I went to SeaTac, got on a plane, flew into O'Hara. And you hear everybody talking about being called baby killer and spit on and beer and shit thrown at you and all that stuff. And I know guys that had that trouble. I never experienced it. Being O'Hara is, I don't know, as a left liberal state, you would have thought that, but it never occurred to me. And I don't remember to this day if I wore my uniform or not, because everything else I had was in my duffel bag and it went home before me. So I think all I had was my uniform. But nobody bothered me.
Yeah, okay.
I got on the bus, went downtown to the bus station, and I met a taxi driver, and he said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Bloomington. Well, I'll give you a ride. I said, no, you're not. It's not at $130 each way.
Yeah.
And so I got on the bus and went home. While I was there messing around, I found a car dealer that had a Lincoln Continental 2-door convertible. I wanted it, That was the car of the day back then. And I guess it was a 4-door actually. So it had the suicide doors on the back. Anyway, I left that behind. I went home. My mother, like I said, met me at the bus station. Didn't recognize me because I was so skinny. We went home and I settled in.
How was that transition coming back home, both being in Vietnam and in the military to civilian life? And also, I mean, once again, like your dad's war, when the war was over, they had 6 weeks for the boat ride home to decompress. You were in a war zone, and literally 24 hours later, you're back in civilization. What was that?
Yeah, they came
transition?
back on a troop ship, so yeah, they decompressed. But, somebody the other day asked me if I went over as a unit, and I said a lot of the Marine units did. Maybe it was you that asked me that, but we went over there as individuals, and we came home as individuals. You know, no, we didn't know anybody on the plane, except a couple. And so we were on our own. You know, so it was a whole different experience in that respect. We had nobody to lean on.
Right.
But like I said, nobody bothered me. And I came from a town that had 900 people, and that was including some of the surrounding countryside. I was an outsider and moved there. When I left, nobody knew I was gone. When I came home, nobody knew I was back. You know. And if you ask, I don't remember what the food was like when I came home. I was just happy to be home.
No doubt, yeah.
You know, things were rolling through my mind. And
Well, let's move ahead then. Take us then in your post-military Vietnam warriors up to the present. Talk about career, family, and just what you did from the 60s on, I guess.
Well, when I went to Vietnam, I was engaged to be married. We were going to get married in November of '68. Like I said, I was trying to push things, never knowing, you know, that maybe I would not come home.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah.
And she was wise enough to stop me, and we held off. So we got married November '68. We were going to have 4 people, 4 for me and 4 for her. And she decided last minute she wanted 1 more. And I said something to my soon-to-be brother-in-law. What do I do? He says, tell her to go to hell. I says, I'm going to marry your sister. I can't do that. So I found another guy. It was my best friend in high school, my brother, her brother, and another kid. And we got married. Went to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky for our honeymoon. I wanted to stay in the cabin, but it's November, and she was freezing, and she begged to go in the hotel, so we did. And then I went back to the job I had when I left, when I went into service. But the job I had was already filled, and they wouldn't give it to me. And the only thing they had open was running computer magnet tapes with all the dailies information on it, with computer cards. I forget what they actually called them. You run them through the machine and it decodes.
Punch cards?
Punch cards, yeah. I hated it. It was down in the basement. It was nighttime, all by myself. They told me how to run it and left me be. And I said, you know, all I got to do is one mistake and I've screwed up this whole deal. And these are 14-inch reels. They're big and they're heavy. And I did that for about a month and a half, and I told my wife, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's move to your hometown. So we did, and I got a job with the city of Lexington, Illinois, running with another gentleman. We ran the street department and the water treatment plant. We had 2 wells. We had a little bitty office where we tested the water. That's where I got involved in water later on down the line. And the people liked me. We did a lot of paving, and I did snow plowing in the wintertime. I did that for 2 years. But they didn't like the fact that I was starting to think on my own, and I would go up north to the rock quarry and get a load of fresh rock and start rocking alleys that I thought needed it. And because I didn't ask them first, they fired me right on the spot.
Wow.
That was fine. I was tired of it.
Yeah.
And a friend of my wife's cousins worked at the gas station. They're the mobile gas station on. By the way, this is off Route 66, if you know what that is. 130 miles south of Chicago. It was a mobile station. I went to work for this guy. His name was Jim Gleason. Really nice guy. I started working the pumps and the cash register, and I doing oil changes, tire changes, and we had this fancy balancer that you put on with brackets, and then it had 3 knobs on it, and you spin it with a spinning machine, and then you'd sit there and you fiddle with these knobs to bring the vibrations of it. And I could put my forehead on the fender of the car and sit there and do that, and it'd be perfect. And everybody that come and got the car said, we want Ron to do this every time. He's the only one that can do it right. And so I did that, and then I had some friends there. 2 of them was in the gas station, and one was doing what we call, what I was doing, but it was for the township. You know, here you have the counties. Back there we had township, city, township, and then the county. And he worked for the township, and we did the same kind of stuff, and they all loved to drink beer. And I've never been a beer drinker, but I did it for, to be with the people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drunk, I never got drunk, but let me regress. Reason why I'm glad I did come home was I went to work doing all this stuff. In the meantime, I was helping my dad do some farming. And my wife was pregnant at the time. She was due in February. My dad came to me in July of 1969. He says, Roscoe, our cousin, had the 200 acres to the north of us. The property we were on was his family's. And he says, he's going to retire. Do you want to help me farm? I said, do you have to ask that question twice? This is what I wanted to do all my life,
Yeah.
He said, it's not enough for 7 of us. It was my brother and sister and her, and then I was going to have my wife and kid.
Yeah.
I said, that's fine, Dad. I have a job over there that I can do. This was when I was still working for the city, obviously.
Yeah.
In October that year, he had a heart attack, and we almost lost him. He was in the hospital for 2 months. He came home, and I took him. He went to the doctor for a checkup, and the doc said, you're good for 25. Do you know what that means? $25,000 in life insurance. He had the life insurance, okay. The next day I took him shopping, Christmas Eve shopping on the 23rd of December. On the 24th, we did our own thing at home. On the 25th, we went to my folks' house in the country, and we had 2 of my mom's brothers and sisters and us, and we had our dinner, and everybody's musical in the family. On my mom's side especially, my dad and I and my brother were the only ones on ours. And we're sitting there playing, and all of a sudden I hear this pling, and I look over and I saw the string broke on my dad's guitar. He had a big jumbo guitar, too big for me. And I looked at him and he had the strangest look on his face, and I said, Dad, give it to me. I can fix it. And I thought I could, but it broke off where it goes in and the peg holds it in there. And if I'd have thought to unwind it and shove it in more, I could have made it stay in there, but I said, I can't do it, Dad. And he got up, put the guitar down, and went in my brother's and sister's room and lay down and started knocking on the wall. I didn't hear it because we're singing, and my brother did. I went in there, and Dad said, don't tell anybody, I'm gone. Don't bother. Don't worry about anybody. Well, he didn't. He come out and got Mom and me, and I didn't know CPR, but I knew enough, to check, and his tongue was laid back, so I put his billfold in his mouth to keep his tongue out and tried to do CPR and mouth to mouth. He was already gone. I called the ambulance, and he was also the funeral home guy. He was drunk on his ass when he come out there. It's less than 6 miles. I says, we're going to the hospital, and I called the doctors. Now, bring him over here. No, he says, bring him over here. So we took him to the doctor, and the doctor said, he's gone, pronounced him dead. And that was the end of my farming. They threw us off the farm before Dad was even lowered in the ground. I hated my cousin for 16 years for not giving me the chance to say yes or no. 16 years later, I forgave him and put it behind me, but that's what I wanted to do. And I was so, from the time I was 4 years, I followed my dad everywhere he went. That's what I wanted to do. And I was robbed. So I had other aspirations. I wanted to be a country music singer. Duh. Never made it that far. I wanted to play baseball. I wasn't good enough. Wanted to be a truck driver. Well, 1 out of 3 is not too bad. I did become a truck driver when I came to Colorado. Anyway, we were out drinking, my buddies and I come home. My son was 6 months old, 7 months old. No, take it back. We were married for a year and a half, or he was a year and a half old. We had a tornado when he was 6 months old, and I'm standing in the station, and the boss wanted to shut the doors. I said, no, all that glass, we got to open something. And it was all I could do, open the man door, keep it open. You know. Anyway, I came home, wasn't drunk. My son was a year and a half old, and she met me at the door and said, where you been? I said, none ya. And that wasn't the right thing. And I took her by the shoulders, didn't grab her, push her, or punch her, and walked her 2 feet back to the wall. And as soon as I did, I knew we were done. And relief came over me because we realized later that we should have never gotten married in the first place. She wasn't into it, and I hadn't grown up yet. I was still a screwed up Vietnam veteran kid, you know. So we went on about our life, and I took odd jobs, and I met a girl whose folks ran a cafe on the other gas station, and she was a lot younger than me, but she hung out with us, and I worked late nights at the gas station. She would stay there, and I'd put my pickup on the hoist, and she'd get up there, and she'd sleep until she was ready to go home, and her folks didn't mind, you know, but he thought we were messing around or was presenting a bad image, and so I got fired from that job. Then I went to working for the guy I used to change his oil in his garbage truck. We had one garbage truck, and he had two guys, and I had the third guy. And I'd ride the skids and go around picking up garbage, and I did that until I got tired of that. And then I had a friend of mine, his dad worked for a manufacturing plant in another city a little far away, and they made floating cutter bars for bean harvest headers. They would float so they could run across the ground and get everything. And I did that for a year and a half. And I soon figured out we were working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I soon figured out that extra day and that half a day was costing me money. So I started not working on a Thursday or a Monday, or never on Friday. I was always there for Friday. That was payday. And the foreman came to me one day and says, if you don't come to work, he says, we're going to fire you. I said, okay. And I just kept doing it. If you don't come to work, we're going to lay you off. I says, listen, I'm losing money working that extra 12 and a half hours. I'm going to keep doing it. I came home the last day that I ever worked there, and I met my friend behind the station I used to work at, and he says, come on, let's go to Colorado. He says, Charlie's got to get his jobs driving out there. And this is April 1973. I was at home with my mother, no other place to go. I said, no, I don't want to go. Well, you got nothing here. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. At one point, my wife called me over to talk to me about things, and she's talking about what they needed, and they said, our furnace went out. We need $800. And I said, hey, anything to do with him, clothing, food, medicine, you name it, it's his. Furnace is yours. You're on your own. And I walked out the door, went to work, and when I came home, he said, come on, you got nothing here. And I said, yeah, you're right. Let me go get my stuff before I change my mind. So on April 14th, we left for Colorado. We got there. There was no driving jobs for us. But the guy that was going to do the driving for us had a custom harvesting outfit. He had two combines, a John Deere 7700 and an old Massey 560. Had no trucks. He had no equipment to haul them with. We got them ready, and we roaded them from Yuma, Colorado to Frederick, Oklahoma, on the Kansas-Oklahoma border.
Oh, jeez.
360 miles. It took me 4 days to do that. And I slept in the cab, you know. We got down there, and we went to doing harvesting. There, I got to do what I like to do. I got to run a combine. I was happy as all get out, you know. Came home, and then I went to working with the guy at the gas station. Next year come around, I quit him. But another guy I got to know was doing the same thing, so a buddy and I went to Anthony, Kansas, helped him finish his shed, and worked and set his combines up. And come May, we headed for the Oklahoma-Texas border. We were right on the Red River, about 2 miles in, and it started to rain. And it rained, and it rained. And so he says, we can't do anything. Why don't you go to Oklahoma, or Texas and get on a oil rig? Okay. So we went to Midland, Texas, and hooked up with an oil rig, outfit. We were there in a motel for 2 weeks. He got the job in the crow's nest where you unhook the pipe and reset them and everything. And I was about 10, 15 feet below him guiding stuff. And they had just repaired one of their pressure tanks. It's a big, like a 1,000-gallon pressure tank. It takes a lot of air pressure to run them drills and stuff. But they messed up. They welded the cap, the concave, up instead of down. Well, what happens when that pressure, nothing to counter it, it blew off. I looked at Dan and he looked at me and says, we're done. And we went home. I worked around there just doing odd stuff. And then in 1974, I started driving truck for a guy north of town. We went to actually, there's a place out east of Kersey called Montfort Feedlot. Montfort owns part of the Rockies, and he was a big deal. Montfort Beef, the fast lane on Interstate 80 type of guy. We went to get a job there. He could get the job, and he's younger than me, but I couldn't get the job, and I'm older than him. Neither one of us had trucking experience, so we came home. And I went and found another guy that had an office up there in Greeley. Went to driving him. We were out of Haxton, Colorado. And I'd haul wheat to Atchison, Kansas, corn home to Greeley. And I did that for almost a year. And I came home one day from load I took to Greeley, and I said to his wife, was the secretary in the church, I said, what that load pay? He says, what load? I said, the one I just took. She says, none of your business. And I said, wrong. And he heard it. I said, what's going on? I said, I want to know what that load paid, so I know what, that's none of your business. I says, you're screwing us. I said, I'm done. Well, you got to get your logs in shape before you can get paid and go, and so I did. And I moved on to this other stuff. I met a guy, he ran a restaurant called the Branding Iron. We became good friends, and I worked for him a little bit at the restaurant, and he had a truck. He bought an old white single cab truck from AG Foods, stretched it and put a 24-foot box on it, and got a long-handled pup to pull behind it. And he ran it, and then he hired a guy who was a drunk, and he got upset and says, you want to run that truck? I said, yeah, I can do that. Well, take a load of wheat to Lincoln and a load of corn to Greeley. So I loaded up, I went to Lincoln, and I back, and I lived 13 miles west of Yuma in a little town called Otis, right on Highway 34. And I get this banging on my front door, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's out there screaming and hollering at me. You, no, no, no. And suddenly, what's the matter? He says, well, I thought you could do the job, and here your truck's sitting there. And I said, Jerry, I've already been to Lincoln and back into Greeley, and I'm ready to go again. His mouth dropped, and from that day I got anything I wanted from him. He bought me a different tractor. He bought me a brand new trailer to go with it, and I worked for him for quite a while, and then we hired another guy, my friend that I met. He took over my truck, and I got a conventional Freightliner when Freightliner and White split. I got one of the first 1976 conventional Freightliners. And I drove that for a while, and then his son-in-law wanted to come to work for us, so he went out and bought a 110/8 single-axle cab-over Freightliner in 1973, and two of the same kind of trailers with a 10-foot ton or 14-foot tongue with them, and I drove that. And we did that for quite a while. And then he got mad because he thought that his driveway was cracking, and he thought the only paving outfit in town was not doing it right. He thought he could do better. So he went to Kentucky and bought a batch plant, and then he went back down and bought two old 1980 Diamond Rios with a 180 Cummins and a 5-3 transmission, and we started pouring concrete for him. And we go out and do the slope cones for the grain bins for gravity feed, and we did a lot of flat work, which was easy to do. And then we found out that we couldn't do it right because we were washing all the gravel, and the guy that was doing it for us would just go get pit gravel, so it had all the dirt and stuff, and it would make it stick together. Danny decided he'd had enough, and he wanted to get out, so he we moved him to Sterling, Colorado. I went to Fort Morgan because I was tired of it too, doing a driving job, and I did that until the insurance wouldn't cover me because I'd had so many speeding tickets. And so I found another guy there in Fort Morgan to go to work for, and I worked for him for a year and a half. Doing the same thing I'd always been doing, and every time I moved, I always did better in my job and better in my pay and stuff. And May of 1979, I decided I wanted to move again and be up with my friend. And so I went to work for the company he was working for, hauling, do the same thing, hauling wheat. We had a restaurant, we called it our center or dispatch office or what do you want to call it, but that's where we gathered. We'd leave there on Sunday afternoon to go to Lincoln, and we stopped at every truck stop on the way from there, and we knew every waitress and everything. And then go load corn and come back to Greeley. And we did that over and over and over. And then in 1980, July or September, I already had 2 speeding tickets, and this was the age of 55-mile-an-hour speed zone. And I was running between 2 trucks because my speedometer wouldn't work, so I thought I was safe. And I got pulled out between them and got another ticket. And I went down to the MVP, whatever you call driver license place, and they wouldn't give me a license. So I was off for 6 months without a license. So I went to work in the elevator.
Oh boy.
And this was April, I think, of 1980. And I worked through, and I had been dating my current wife once a year. I met her through her cousins down there, and we were going to get married. And I stayed with them, and wheat harvest came, and I stayed. And corn harvest started coming around, and I stayed. I had a job in Windsor, going to drive a dairy feed truck, to the various dairies and stuff. But I was loyal to this guy. And on September 4th of 1981, the beginning of Labor Day, I went to work, and the elevator blew up on me. They took me to the hospital. They couldn't find me. I went to shut the leg off because it's milliamps switches. They weren't direct switches. It was already 2.8. The elevator had already done 2 booms. It was gone. But the pit that the bottom of the leg was in, I had just cleaned out. It's 15 feet deep. And it had close to 12 feet of stuff in it before I cleaned it out. Good thing. Or I wouldn't have been there at all. But it was a 30-inch cover. And I scraped my back when I go down in it. It dropped me straight through and never touched. I said, okay, the ladder's this high off the ground. If I get a foot up there, I can get it, I'll be fine. And I did not have the strength to do it, so I just dropped back on the floor. And I said, all right, you know what you're going to do. And pretty soon I heard, yeah, I found him, he's down here. And my other boss ran the elevator part of the deal. And they pulled me out, took me to the hospital, and right away they knew the hospital couldn't handle me. They wanted to know numbers that I could call, and I memorized my wife's folks' house's number and gave it to them, and they called them. And I was fortunate that there had been a fuel explosion in the truck stop north of Pueblo earlier the year before. And the guy had saved 2 little girls that were sitting at the pump. The fuel transport guy forgot to set his brake or something, and it rolled into the pumps and it blew up. He saved them, but in the process he got burnt severely. He was 53 years old. The day I got hurt, he died. And I got his room at the hospital. It was a 5-bed burn unit, and I got the center bed that had all the bells and whistles. He gave his life for me for a place to survive. And I think about him all the time. I never got to know his name, but I know he's special, I, all the way to the hospital. Well, here, the ambulance took me to the hospital. My boss that I did the driving with screamed and hollered at him, how come the helicopter's not here? Well, sir, they don't have a helicopter there. Lutheran Hospital in Debra has the helicopter. We've got to alert the pilot. He's got to get there. If he's not already there, he's got to get warmed up. It's an hour by chopper. It's 125 miles. Then we got to get you on it. Then he's got to get him there, and there's no heliport at the hospital, so he's got to go back to Lutheran, unload him into an ambulance, take him to the hospital, unload him out of that, and get him in there. It's faster by going ambulance. He said, well, if he dies, but he understood. And all the way to the hospital, I knew I wasn't going to die.
Were you, or did they have you pumped up with drugs? I mean, were you in
No.
any pain?
No, I was no pain because I was burned over 65% of my body, which was my back, front, and all of this that you see. My face was because I went like this, and my hands are like the same way. But it burnt my nerve endings. It was that deep. So I had no pain. I was joking with the nurse. I wanted some ice. No, I can't have ice, but you can have some water. And we got to Denver on Colorado Boulevard, rush hour traffic, and we're stopping. And I go, what are we stopping for? It's rush hour traffic. And I said, you're an effing ambulance. This is an emergency. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, I could hear them talking to dispatch. They didn't know where they were going because they'd never been there before.
Oh.
So I got there, and I got in, and my wife, soon-to-be wife, and her dad was there, and she looked and she said, Dad, is that him? She said my head looked the size of a basketball, And they got me into the burn unit room, and they talking to me, and how do you feel? And I said, I'm fine. Well, we're going to intubate you. And I said, no, you're not. I said, sir, we're concerned with you might have burnt your lungs and throat. If you close up, you're dead. Well, they did it to me anyway. I couldn't do it. And then I was in that room for 37 days, went through 27 different graftings.
Oh.
I was so high on morphine that, I was flying my own kite. I was an Air Force pilot, jet number 1. I was in space. I was being chased by space monkeys, and it was quite the trip. And then I got to the point where they could move me out into a room that had a gigantic bathtub. It was 10 foot long and 4.5 feet wide, and 3 or 4 feet deep, because they had run me in on a gurney, and they're pretty wide. And they put me in there, and there was a little nurse named was Susie. She's probably 4'9" or 10. Anyway, she's down on her knees with her chin and arms hanging over that tub and crying. I said, I think I told you that they were supposed to get married when we did. Anyway, so I said, Susie, what's the matter? She says, I'm hurting you. I said, so? I don't want to hurt you. I said, Susie, what do you have to do to make me better? I have to hurt you. I said, then go for it. She couldn't handle it. She quit. And people in the burn unit, they don't last very long. It takes a very, very special nurse like the Vietnam nurses to handle this stuff. And I got over that. I want to step back. I said, I didn't think I was going to die. I truly think that the man up above prepared me. We didn't have internet. We didn't have blogs and all that stuff and Facebook. We had magazines, and I don't know what it was. It was a National Geographic, but I read what burn patients would go through to survive. So I think he prepared me for and I knew everything they were going to do to me.
Huh.
And I was ready for it. I did at one point in time, because I thought I was being chased by Indians. They had a camper with a big old propane tank, and they were trying to burn my hands and stuff. And I later found out that they were debrieding the skin off my fingers is what it was, But the mind, if my mind knew what was going on, I wouldn't have made it. But I came to the point in time I finally said, I can't do this anymore. Let me go. And whether you've been, and I don't want to tell anybody you have to believe that any of this stuff or not. I grew up in religion. I walked away from it. I've come back to it. But I swear, when I said, I'm done, let me go, this crick appeared, and this man in a scow sitting in the middle of the river looked like the picture of Jesus in the church, white lobe there, going like this. And I shook my head no, and he was instantly gone, and I got better. and we related the story. They said, we're on death's bed. I had an infection that was fixing to take me. And because of all that happening, I turned around. And the funny thing is, what they learned from my experience helped people down the road.
Yeah.
And I had help. There was a gentleman I got to know when I went back to hauling grain again, that was burnt similarly in a grader accident. The graders had pony motors to start them, and he was filling a hot engine gas, and it burned him. What they learned from him, they helped me. So everything is gone. So I think I contributed to things. And I got done with that, and they moved me out on the floor. And then I get roommate, and he's screaming, hollering. He was in pain. And they come in, Ron, do you need anything? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Once in a while I would ask for something, but he was constantly asking, you got to have something, And the head nurse, Wendy, says, you're amazing. We can tell just by looking at people whether they're addicts or not, whether they need it or not. And she says, you've got the highest pain tolerance of anybody we've ever come across. Huh. I said, well, I think I was built that way. But this guy burned his crotch with a cigarette, and he was constantly wanting stuff. They got him out, and I got a roommate that my wife met him and his fiance. She's older than him. He was 21. Was almost split in half by a Michigan inloader in Carbondale, Colorado. He was 21 years old. So he was paraplegic. And because my wife witnessed their getting married, we became good friends. They put him in my room with me, and we talked and stuff. And I got put in my place. I had to go to the bathroom. And I could undo the strings, but with my hands the way they are, I couldn't tie them. And I come out, and his name was Tom. His name's Tom Foster. Greatest kid I ever knew. I says, Tom, would you do me a favor? What's that? I said, would you tie my string for you? He says, yeah. I said, I wish I had your hands. How you put me in my place? I wish I had your legs. Mm. And I just shut up right then and there. I was blessed that I can do things. And then 91 days later, I was done. Wow. I walked out of there. Nobody would tell us what my chances were. They wouldn't tell my mom or my brother or anybody. Had no idea, what it was, till the day I walked out, and I was not supposed to walk out. I had 1% chance. I was supposed to go out through the basement on a slab. Wow. So, even though I don't always think I appreciate it, I talk to him a lot, try to keep my life in order, and I came home for Christmas, and then we were supposed to get married in September, and then venue plan went out. So we got married the 16th of January during the rodeo in Denver, National Western Stock Show. January 16th will be 44 years we've put up with each other. And I don't know how we've managed, because we scream and holler all the time. But I look around the people that are all lovey-dovey and everything, and we decided a long time ago that no matter what, if we beat ourselves up, we're together. Yeah. We're a different kind of relationship. And she's put up with me for 44 years, taken care of me for 44 years. And so I'm very grateful. Wow. Got married. The state was supposed to fix me up with something to do. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Nothing behind a desk. And I had a lawyer who unfortunately had cerebral palsy, and I think it was a detriment to our case because people look down on disabilities. He was the nicest guy in the world, but I called him up one day and I said, what do we need to get permanent disability? He says, well, technically, if you can push a pencil across the table, you're not disabled. I said, then I'm done. I'm done with this and you. I know every character, every soap opera there is, front and back. I'm tired. I'm at man's rope. I'm going to hang myself. He said, okay. Well, one day I was looking at an ad, and there was a job application for a driving job out of Commerce City, Colorado. And I told my wife, I'm going to go apply for it. So I went down and got my medical, went down and applied, and did my thing, and I got up to leave, and the lady was 4 years older than my mother. She treated me like her son. You know, we're good friends. Where are you going? Well, I know the drill. Don't call us. You call me. No, sit down. He'll talk to you. So he did, and we're sitting there talking, and he says, I see you got a lot of miles on you hauling grain. I had 300,000 miles hauling grain. Not an accident. Well, I had one accident, but it was because the guy stopped in front of me at a green light, and I hit him. But anyway, he said, well, would it make you mad if you went out with another driver to get a feel? I said, no. I said, anything I can learn, is my benefit. Okay. And we left it at that. I came home and told my wife I got a job. Monday morning I went down there, and they didn't know I was coming back. They hadn't really given me a job, but they did. Huh. And then I went with a guy for 3 weeks, and we got along until he started smoking, and he's a chain smoker, and I had troubles with my throat.
Sure.
He said, is it okay if I smoke? And I said, yeah, as long as you keep the window open. Well, he didn't. And by the time I was with him a week and we were ready to come home, I couldn't talk. Yeah. And he set me up with another driver. Needed to get home right away. We were in the caves in Kansas City, Missouri, on the Missouri side. And so I drove. And we split the load coming back to get to Denver. And that guy ended up dying later on from cancer. And I worked for them. It was called CODE, Chicago, Omaha, Denver Express. They had Denver Terminal, Omaha Terminal, and Chicago Terminal. Chicago Terminal happened to be right across from Midway Airport. I could walk across the street, walk to the airport, and do anything I wanted to do. Can't do that today.
Yeah.
And then I was out and I was training guys. We had one guy that worked for one of the guys that was partners that bought the Rockies. And it was NW was the freight line. I called it Nut Wagon. You've heard of them. Yeah. He wanted to drive, but he couldn't get a job. He needed experience, so he come to us, and we said, yeah. So I took him with me. And the first trip, we went to Chicago. And when we got there, I said, Nate, would it bother you if I get a load taking us to the coast? He said, no, that's fine. So I got a load. It took us to Providence, Rhode Island. And on our way out there, I said, so you're married? Yeah. You got any kids? Yeah. What's their age? He said, 7 and 9. I says, you love your wife? Yeah. You love your kids? Yeah. Get out of here. This isn't for you. If she's not fully 100% behind you, you'll never make it. And I took him out there, and we come home, and that's what he did. He did something else. I came across 2 other gentlemen. One was a barber, and he was wanting to change his deals, and so I took him with me. And our first trip out, I had to go to Boston. And there's it's a Bloomdale or Bloom something other, Pennsylvania, and the ramp is a half mile long, and it's all downhill. And I says, get off here. And we're going full tilt at 62 miles an hour. I says, put the brakes on. We almost ran the light. All right, you see that stanchion there with the light on it? I said, don't hit it. What's the first thing you do? Hit it with the wheels on the trailer. And I screamed. I said, all right, we're going up here to the truck stop, and you're going to beat that rim out. If you can't it out, you're getting on a bus and going home. And I get up there, and the guy says, oh, I'll do it. And I said, no. The deal is he beats them rims out, so they hold air. I said, he's on the bus going home. And he did it. And I took him on to Boston. I took him back home, dumped him, went about my business. And by this time, you remember when Reagan had his colon cancer scare and deal? My father-in-law did too, but his split. And he didn't know it. He thought there was other deals, and so it spread through his body, and he was doing chemo and stuff. And I got sent to southern Pennsylvania, between Pennsylvania and Ohio, or whatever state it was. And I said, I don't want to go, but you got to go do this. Well, I got to be home. I said, my father-in-law is in the hospital. He's not doing well. I don't know how long he's going to be. He's okay. So I took another driver with me. He was about 280 pounds, big fat guy, bib overalls like I used to wear. We went out there. I picked up a load, and I had to stop in Safeway in Denver to unload part of it. And then I had to go to City Market, which is now King Soopers in Junction. And I looked over and it had snowed and it was icy. And I'm a fast driver. I pedal to the metal. I'm dangerous to myself, but that's the way I've always been. I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I've always known how to do what I do. I said, what kind of experience do you have in training? Oh, we went up to Genesee and back, and I says, you don't have any mountain experience. You sit there and watch. And I hammered down all the way across the Grand Junction, empty all the way back, foot to the floor, going around corners, And I dumped him off, and I told my boss, all right, he says, when it's all over, come back when you're ready, and we'll get him going. And so I did. My father passed away in March of 1989, and I went back to work, and I said, oh, he quit. And I said, why? He said, you scared the shit out of him. I says, good. I says, I push people if they can't handle what I'm doing, and I wasn't dangerous. I just know my limits, They can't handle. They don't need to be doing this job. That's why we have the wrecks we have today, because people don't have or don't get trained in the experience that they need. They put out there and they drive like they're driving their Cadillac or their sports car, And I worked for him until I got tired of having to pay my own lumper fees. We had to pay somebody to unload the trailers. All the meat was on the floor, so it had to be put on pallets at these grocery chains. They didn't pay for it. The driver did. We got reimbursed, but I only got $40, and sometimes it cost me $70 or $100. And I went to him one day, and this was in late April of '89, and I said, I want my pay. You got to give me more. Well, we ain't going to do it. And I says, then I'm not doing this anymore. I said, this is supposed to be your job. The shippers or receivers should be paying for these lumpers, but they weren't. I said, I'm done. And then I went to work in Sterling for a guy I knew I had run with my early years in Yuma. And he had 7 trucks, and I got one. It was a fast-running T600 Kenworth. Had an 8 or a 15 speed over, and I started driving. The first day I went out with it, I had to go to Seattle, the Safeway in Seattle, and I left loaded on Saturday. Had to be there Monday morning. It's 1,500 miles. I called him at, I think it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and said, I'm unloaded. You're there? I said, yeah, it's no big deal, but I said, yeah, I'm there. And from that on, I did what I needed to do. Then he said, all right, you got to go to California. I said, I ain't going. I'm not going. Well, it's just Bakersfield. All right, I'll go to Bakersfield. Well, you got to go to Los Angeles. I said, no, I'm not going to L.A. And I ran him around and ran him. And he thought I was serious. I said, all right, I'll go. And I ran 13 years for this guy going to California. Huh. But I got sick and tired of it. So one day I said, you got a load going to Hunts Point? That's the meat market in New York. It's right across the river from Rikers Island. Yeah. So I took a load, and I had to go to Pennsylvania, my first drop, and I talked to a guy there. Actually, I wasn't going to Hunts. I was going to the market out. But anyway, it was New Year's Eve day, and I called him to get directions. Find your own way. I said, this doesn't work this way. So I was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I talked to a Can-Am driver. I said, do you go here? He said, yeah. How do you get there? And he told me. I went. I showed up late. They were going to go. It was New Year's Day Eve. We're going home. I said, I called you, told you I wouldn't be here. Then they found out it was on the floor, 13,000 pounds of tripe. I said, you're going to take it off? Or I said, it's going to go in the Hudson River. I'm not coming back. Well, it's on the floor. I said, it's no problem. I said, I'll help them do it, Well, by the time I got unloaded, it was too late to load. So I spent New Year's Eve in Little Ferry, New Jersey. Nice little place. Loaded and came home. And I went back to New York 5 or 6 times, And I did end up going to Hunts Point, which is a very bad part of the city. You're always being robbed and stuff. And Montford's drivers always said, do not stop for red lights. In the daytime, you don't have any choice. At night, you don't. You just keep right on going. Wow. And I took my wife out there one year with my son. He was, 13 months old, something like that. And we crossed the George Washington Bridge, and there's concertina wire on the building. She says, are we in Russia? I says, it looks like it, don't it? And then there was a burnt-out car on the sidewalk. And I took her down there, and we went in. Once you get in the gate, you're safe. But I had a sheep load that was ahead of me, and then I was next. And we got out of there, and I pulled out, and one of the lights to get back on the Sheridan, there's a cop's car sitting there, the light's going, and he's got a hooker across the hood, and I go through the light. She goes, you just ran the red light. Yeah, ain't that fun? But the cop, I says, you see what he cares less about me.
Huh. Wow.
I loved running I've run all 48 states.
Have you ever sat down and roughly calculated how many highway miles you've driven in your whole career? Would you guess?
Over 3 million. I would say easily over 3 million. I did 180, 200,000 a year. And I kept driving. I cut back in 2014. Actually, in 2007, I did some out haul. I did a lot of Chicago for a whole year. I know Hall, the metro, all around Chicago. I went 2 trips to Houston that year. The rest of it was all Chicago area. But yeah, and then I got tired of that, and he sold the company, and I wanted to move on. So I went to work for a friend of mine, and we were doing local. We were hauling empty cans and bottles out of Windsor to the Budweiser plant out here. And I did that for 2 years. And when I started out, it was the night shift. And a week later, the kid says, "Can you do the day shift?" Yeah. A week, can you? So I was all over the books. Any shift that came up, and I have never had a problem with time changes or being, I just worked through it all the time. But I did that, and I was tired. It's drop and hook. You drop a trailer over there, one place to the other, and you pick up a load, and you come. Then you got to drop it and pull the empty trailer out of the bottle line or empty trailer out of the can line. You drop it, hook, put your load, and then you got to pull the dunnage trailer out, put another one in its place. And I was doing 9 or 10, 15 drops and hooks in a round. And my body was getting where I just didn't want to do it. So I said, I'm going to retire. Well, when I did, my best friend says, come to work for us. They had 2 trucks, and they was getting another one, and he wanted me to run his day cab, and I was run local to Denver out of New Belgium and Odell breweries. And then he got in trouble at home and no place to stay, so he had to go out on the road. So I actually started doing his job, and I ran that for 2.5 years. Didn't like the weather. We'd have to go to Boulder, and you know how 36 is in the wintertime. Yeah. I hated, so I canceled it and have to do it later. And then we started doing other stuff, and we started hauling Corona to Cheyenne, and then we got into hauling insulation to these construction sites and stuff, and I enjoyed it. And then I ended up getting a 96 Peterbilt 369, and I run that until the motor blew up on it. And then he passed away, and I started driving his truck, and got to where I was finally tired of it and didn't want to do this anymore. And I told the bosses, I've been wanting to go fishing, but I don't fish. It was an excuse. Yeah. My telling the other guys I wanted to retire so they wouldn't be upset that I was quitting and doing something else. We still got along, still to this day. So July of 21, I quit. I retired. And I piddled, and I piddled, and I piddled, and I got bored, and I'm on my computer playing computer games or on Facebook. And I finally said, I got to go do something else. So 3 years ago this month, I joined the senior center in Wellington. I'm up for I ran last year for president for the board, and I lost by 1 vote. And we're all good friends. And then she appointed one of the girls as the acting vice president, which is the seat she vacated. And they wanted me to run against her, and I don't know if I'm going to win or not. But next month I'll know if I win or not. But I'm running for vice president of that. And on top of that, 2 weeks later, I joined the Elks. I got inducted in December 3 years ago, and I've been doing this ever since. As you can see, I'm proud of my Elks shirt. When I'm here, I am the Tyler of the group, so I guard the outer door. I volunteer for our veterans. I must say that when I got out, I never talked about being where I was. I didn't talk to my folks about what I did. My dad did ask my cousin who was in the Air Force, where's Ron? How did he know? But all he could say is, well, he's okay. And I was. But I never acknowledged, because I was on the wrong end of the chain. I wasn't getting my ass shot off. I didn't, so I denied it. But when I was living in Sterling, the traveling wall came around, and I would go there. There's been 3, and I've been to all 3. And my best friend that passed away last year was in the Marines. I figured he was on Hamburger Hill or close to it because he wouldn't talk about it. I got him to talk about things. He wouldn't go. He would not go to the wall. I come here. We've had 4 here, 1 up in Wellington for the later group, and I've been to all 4. The past 2 years, our lodge has read some of the names on that wall, and I make sure that their ranks are read correctly. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know what LG is or what SGT is, and I try. A couple of them threw me. I always try to read their names. I volunteered for shopping with our veterans at Walmart. In fact, not this year, but the year before, I did 18 different shopping trips over the course of the year, and then I got hurt, and I was done with that. And I was going to do one when I came back this year before I went on the honor flight, and it was in discrepancies of what I needed to do for the doctor, so I haven't done them since.
Now, are you doing all this outside of the Elks, or
it's for the Elks? It's for the Elks. We work with the Veterans Organization. Okay. Service organization, and the guy I work with, his name is Rick, and he's a real nice guy. Yeah. I went the year before with one of our girls from here just to observe, and I didn't do anything. I was sitting there talking to they have a representative, Rick's one of them. They had a lady, and I'm running around talking to her, and she's keeping track of the money, and I have to keep track of the money. We started out with $300 for them, and make sure we didn't go over, and that they bought the appropriate things that were allowed, and so I didn't pay that much attention to where we were going, what we were doing. And then the next year, they asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, yeah. And I go to Walmart, and I walked in the door, and they had changed everything around. I go, oh, God, what am I going to do? So I went and found some workers, and I said, where's this at, and where's this at, and where's this at? So I had an idea. And he come walking in, and he took charge. He'd been doing all, we started it with the what do you call it? Face goods. Hygiene.
Oh, yeah.
You know, toothpaste, toothbrushes, and deodorant, and all that kind of stuff. And I just followed him around, and he'd keep track of the money, and I'd say, okay, you can do this, or you can't do this. And I'd talk to the veteran, and I'd try to find out what's going on with them, and engage as much as I could, and in later times, we started taking pictures of us together. I don't follow them around. It's not allowed to be trailing them or anything unless you have a personal interest in them. But Rick and I did that, and I loved it. I did have an incident that scared me. It threw me off. He wasn't there, and the guy that takes care of the mental health of these guys is out of Greeley, came is his substitute, and he was talking on the phone and sends me off with this kid. And the story was that he was in the Marines. He was 26 years old. He was not treated well. They threw him out, or he walked out after 4 years or whatever, and he was paranoid, and he was schizo, and he was prone to committing suicide. And we're walking around in the hygiene, but he's going around sniffing all the soaps and stuff, and I said, everything okay? They're putting stuff in there to kill us. And I'm going, okay, what did I just walk into? And so I said to him, I said, well, were you overseas? No, I wanted to go there and die. Now I'm really off kilter, you know, and this guy's out there. He got his ass chewed later for abandoning me that way. So I'm walking around, what am I doing? How do I handle this? You know, and I worked it out. I figured how to, to talk to him and stuff. But I had to control him too. He couldn't decide whether he wanted this trash bag or this trash bag, this trash bin or this trash bin, this or that. And I finally said, look, this is it. We got 5 more minutes, this or this, but we're done. Now, by this time, we were allowed $400, and Rick and I would go over all the time because I wanted to use every drop of the money that the grant allowed us to use. And so I would. If it was $10, we paid it out of our own pocket. I run into veterans every day. I talk to them. I ask them how they're doing. I always salute them. I always say thank you for your service. I don't care if it's back to you or not, but my passion is them. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago I finally started saying I was part of what went on over there. And My friend bought me a veteran shirt. It's in my closet. I don't wear it. He bought me a different hat that's in my car that I wear other times. He got me back into what I'm doing.
And then you mentioned earlier that you just came off the honor flight. Talk about that experience.
Well, there was something else I wanted to say.
Oh.
It was about my time. You asked me, what I thought about being in country. You remember what my thoughts about stuff. I told you that I heard that Johnson wanted this war to go on for 10 more years. And the guys around were just all upset. I was too. I turned my hate to that man for a long time. But like I said, I sat down and figured out what he was doing. What does war do in this country? It generates commerce. It gave us economy. It gave us life. Unfortunately, our boys went on doing what they were asked to do and were never respected.
Yeah.
That's the thing that bothers me, the whole deal, that I'm reading these names, and these are 19 and 20, 22-year-old kids doing what they were told to do, not what they wanted to do.
Right.
All because the senator's son didn't go.
Yeah.
It's Creedence Clearwater Revival. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I get my mouth dry. What was it you was asking me now?
Oh, I just, you were talking about you finally came to the point that, yes, I was a veteran. I was part of this. And I just wondered if the honor flight probably heightened
Well, I
that
started
a-
looking around and I said, a corporation has the janitor that mops the floors and takes out the trash. The corporation has a secretary. The corporation sometimes has medical, but you always got a chain of command to the top dog. And I said, I was the tail end of that chain of command to the top dog. Like I said before, talking about paying people. They like their money and they want to be paid. And so I finally decided I'm just as much a part of what went over there as anybody else.
Absolutely.
And I walk around proud of what I did and who I am.
Yeah. As you should be.
Honor flight. I applied for the Rocky Mountain Honor Flight out of Denver 2.5 years ago. And I called after a while, and they're so backed up because there's so many, especially in the Denver area, that's ahead of me. And I said, okay, that's fine. And my buddy's brother-in-law got on the April flight of this year, and we tried to get him to go. And like I said, because of what happened, he refused to even acknowledge anything with the military till his later years. But Lynn got to go, and about that time, they called me from Denver. We're ready to set you up. And I go, okay. I didn't think about it. I was going to set my buddy up to go with me. Obviously, it's too late. I want to take him with me. Will you be mad if I bow? No, he says, there's people filling these slots. He said, it's fine. So I joined the High Plains honor flight. And of course, my buddy had already died, so I took him as a picture.
Oh, wow.
He's in my billfold.
Wow.
But I got called in July to get things set up, talked to the medical guy. I talked to the guardian in August. And on September 29th, we boarded the plane in Loveland and went to Baltimore. Got to Baltimore at 4:30 in the afternoon, got checked in, and we had our supper that night. And I got to know the people on the bus and on the plane. And I'm real close friends with my guardian. He lives in Risk Canyon. We talk a lot about things. His wife is actually a guardian member of this honor flight. She sets a lot of this stuff up, but he was my seatmate on the plane, and he pushed me around and was with me the whole time we did our things. But that night we sat and had supper, and there was 9 of us at our table. And I said to the guys, no, it didn't apply to me, how many of you, when you came home, observed being spit on and called names and stuff? And there was only 2. And guess where it was at? San Francisco.
Yeah.
That was the hippie place at the time. Like I said, I came home and nobody ever knew anything about it. So we talked about it. We talked about what they went through and stuff. And I got to be close with them. Went to our room, went to bed, and I had a roommate. It was a different bus, but he's from Severance, and I got his name and lost it. So I'll never get a hold of him again. But we're going to get up at 5 o'clock because we had to be breakfast and be out there by 6:37. Here we were up at 5 o'clock already.
Which is 3 o'clock our time.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were up and got dressed, and it's a good thing we did because it took us a while to get around. Had our breakfast, and we all boarded the buses, and that took an hour to get everybody loaded up. You got to count, make sure everybody's there. You can't leave anybody behind. And we headed for the wall. And we got off. Of course, I'm pushing the wheelchair. My biggest goal is I wanted to walk up to the Lincoln Memorial, but that's 600 steps.
Yeah.
And way up, my back was there at the time. I didn't think I could do it. They've got an elevator, but I think they were working on it. So I just looked at it and took a picture from far away, and we went to the wall. My wife's cousin is on the wall, and I got two friends that one my brother and I went to school with, got married in 1973. No, excuse me, 1967, and was 21 years old or something like that. Went in country in 1968, January 68, and was dead by March. Left a wife behind and a kid on the way. I had the kid that I worked with at the insurance conglomerate enlisted after I was. He's 6 months younger than me. Ended up marrying the girl that I've delivered mail to, and he was sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana. I don't know what they did down there, what it was, but they got married and bought a hot car and was purchasing a house, and he got shipped to Vietnam. Got to Vietnam in August of 1968 and was dead July of 68, was dead by August. And so I looked there, I've got their names on the wall.
Now, you said you had visited the traveling wall a number of times. Well, that was after, before. Was this the first time?
This first time I've ever been to the wall. I've been to D.C. in the truck, but I was a mile and a half east of the Capitol and couldn't get there. But this first time I've been, And I was disappointed. I thought the wall was bigger than what it really is. The traveling wall is almost as big. It's just 2 or 3 feet taller.
Yeah.
It's about the same length and everything. But, so I was kind of disappointed that it wasn't 12, 14 feet tall, like it looks like when you see people in the pictures, everything. But I guess they're on their knees. But I was still impressed. And I got to touch the wall, so that's a memory for me.
Sure.
And then we went to the end of it where the nurses' memorial is, and I touched the nurses. And for our breakfast, our veterans breakfast this year, we had a girl from the Greeley Elks Lodge that was doing the dishwashing. Turned out she was a nurse in Vietnam in the same era that I was there. And so we had a lot to talk about. She was in the Trang. And the stuff that and I've watched these videos of these girls and the things that they've had to talking about, having to put mattresses over their patients and get on the floor and everything. We talked for an hour. I got to go to Greeley, and she's a Tyler over there like I am here, so we got that in common. But we did that stuff, and then right across, you've been there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know about the Korean War.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to see it at night, but they say it's spooky that the eyes light up on those statues. It's just I want to do it though. But I stood in front of the reflecting wall, and he took a picture of me reflecting off that wall. Right. We did that, and we walked around, and of course I stood there and saw the Washington Memorial, and you could see the World War II Memorial at the end of it, and they told us how that all came about and how you can't see it actually from where we're staring at the Lincoln Memorial because it's down below, And then we boarded the bus to go to Arlington, and we were supposed to be there at 11:30 to go to the changing of the guard. Well, old guys, and we had guys in wheelchairs and stuff, slow to get on the bus. And like you said, everybody's got to be accounted for. So we were late. We got there at a quarter after, and it was too late to do it. So we had to wait an hour, which turned out to be fantastic. Now, I told my guardian, I said, I want to take a picture of Audie Murphy's gravestone.
Oh, right,
It's right behind the tree where you get off there. and we weren't supposed to do it, but and I got a picture, it's on my phone or camera, and I had the wheelchair, and he made me get in the wheelchair, and he pushed me up the ramp up there, and I sat there on the end, and they were just ending the changing of that guard when we got there, and it was a cute girl. She had her hair up with a bun and a braid around it, impeccable in what they did, And then she transferred it to the next guard. He went through his 30-minute paces, and then we got to see the next changing of the guard. So we had a bonus that nobody else gets to have.
Right.
And I sat there and I counted every 21 steps, every 21 seconds, every time they did it. And I figured they made that round 10 times in 30 minutes.
Wow. Wow.
And it was precise.
Yeah.
The precision that they do this stuff over and over and over again. I admire them so greatly. And so the fact that I always wanted to see Arlington.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do that. And now I get things about that on my Facebook page all the time, But we did all that, and we moved around. We went by this building, and I couldn't understand what she was saying, but we went to the Air Force Memorial where the chutes, the contrails are going up, and I didn't understand what was going on. But she's talking about the different color in the sandstone on the building.
Oh, the Pentagon.
Shh, don't say that yet. And I didn't pay any attention. I didn't understand it until we were up there at the Air Force Memorial, and I'm looking over there and SOB. It's the Pentagon. That's where that plane hit the Pentagon. And I've got a guy I know here that spent a lot of time there, and he knows all about that. He said the people inside never felt a thing. It's the outer walls that killed the people that did. And I didn't know that was the Pentagon because I've seen it from an aerial picture where it looks kind of like this, That thing's a half a mile wide and half a mile deep or more, and 200 or 300 feet in.
Yeah.
But we drove by it, so I got to see that. We went to the Iwo Jima Memorial. I didn't go up to it. We had lunch there, and I sat and took pictures of it and stuff. I got pictures of it at home for things I've done. But Ira Hayes, I don't know if you've ever heard of Ira Hayes.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash sang the song, Ira Hayes, Ira Hayes. Oh, that drunken bum, Ira Hayes. He was one of the guys that raised the flag, came home a hero, and died a drunk. Disrespected. So that's the reason why I like the Iwo Jima Memorial, because of him. Like I said, I look after, I think about the downtrodden people, the people below me. We had our lunch there, and then we went to the World War II Memorial. I walked around and took pictures of my state, Illinois, the state of Colorado, Kentucky, Ohio, all of them. And then I was going to bring that picture with me. I'm sorry I didn't. I took a picture. He took a picture. And you can't hardly see us because he's up on the bridge facing the water. We're backed up to the water. And so, you have to really look with a bite to find us. And then I turned and took a picture of me with Washington Memorial behind me. So I was going to bring that picture to show it to you so you can see what it was. We did that, and I took pictures for other people. I bought a bracelet. I don't even know what I did with it now. $5 from a Vietnamese woman, and walked around and just admired something. And that was just done 2 years ago. They finished it, And I remember traveling the mall area. We went around the Washington Memorial over a dozen times in our back and forth stuff we did, And it was time to go. And we had rush hour traffic going from Baltimore to D.C. and rush hour going home. And I hate the traffic, but I decided they didn't have any wrecks there. You got solid traffic every road you looked at, but there was no wrecks. You can't even go 10 miles and there's a wreck around here, 100 mile an hour. But I might go back, but I think I want to mess around on my own, to get on a tour bus or something. I want to take my family back so that they can see what I saw.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm so proud of what we did and the people that I was with and the closure I got. I mean, I didn't weep because I didn't have things to weep about. But I understand, and I always love Jimmy Forrest and the Statler Brothers, The Wall song. I mean, that's a patriotic song, No End To, you know.
Yeah.
So I always sing that every chance I get it.
Yeah.
And we got on the plane, had to sit there an hour where they loaded stuff, and I don't know what cargo we brought home, but we were there an hour before we ever got in the air. Ran into a thunderstorm, so we had to go around. Now, we got back at 9 o'clock that night, and they gave us a tribute. Well, when we got to Baltimore, we passed underneath the fire trucks with the hoses.
Yeah.
They were cleaning the nits and ticks off of us, I guess. Make sure we were clean. But I like that. But the fire trucks and the police departments all around. And when we went out, all the fire trucks and fire department and the police departments that came from Grand Junction even to honor us as we left.
Yeah.
And I want to say that I kind of knew what was going on, but there was somebody on the bus that was just in awe that all the people that stood on the shoulder and waved to us had no idea. I mean, that was a tearful moment for them. You know? And then we got on the bus and went to center, and I came home.
Yeah.
And then last week after our veterans, I went to the Moose Lodge in Evans, and they put on a barbecue for each honor flight, and I got to see some of my friends and the guys that I was with and stuff, and a great time.
Yeah. Good.
Now I'm wore out and I'm doing other things.
Good. Well, we'll wind down this interview. Is there anything? I know I didn't ask a lot of questions.
You should have.
Yeah. Well, because you were telling your story well, and I didn't want to interrupt you. But was there anything that we didn't talk about? Now, before we ended, I know we only got probably the iceberg or the tip of the iceberg of your story. But is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wind down this?
Well, what did we miss?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know.
If you feel good that we've rounded it out, we'll wind it down.
I think we've done
done
a lot.
The last question I always like to ask with these interviews is, when you look back on that period of time when you're in the Army and over in country in Vietnam, when you look back on that, did that have an effect on your life, change your life, play a role in your life at all? Or was that just one of the many chapters in your life that you've gone through? How would you answer that, do you think?
It was one of the books on the shelf.
Okay.
It was one of my chapters, you know. And like I said, when I came home, it was gone.
Yeah.
I left everything behind the minute I got on that plane.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, I've got the memories of it.
Yeah.
And the people, I never kept in touch with any of them. I kind of wish I had of. But when you're going out there on your own, and I was the only one that left there at that time.
Yeah, right.
You know, so I didn't have any other people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but it's an experience that I am proud that I did. And like I said, I thought if my dad could go through what he'd go through, I certainly could. And my uncle on my dad's side and my two youngest uncles on my mom's side were in the Navy. They didn't have to go to war. My dad was the only one that did, you know. But you know, they got there toward the end of it. But I'm proud that I served my country. I would do anything for this country. I don't know that I'd go back and take arms, but we're going to come down one day to a revolution like nobody's ever seen. It's not going to be like the Civil War, and there's going to be a lot of tragedy coming.
Wow.
And I hope that we can get over this.
Yeah.
I wish people would learn to quit being so pissy about everything. And with the advent of social media, I can call you an asshole, and you don't know who I am. And they're always doing it every day, and you don't know who's right or wrong. They're too afraid to say it in your face.
Yeah.
I wish we had more love in this world than we do than hate.
Yeah.
I have problems at home. I'm an angry man. I'm still dealing with my anger over life as it's been. Somebody said that we had a lady just graduated from psychology class come to talk to me when I was in the hospital. First thing she says, "You're mad at God, right?" I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, you got to be mad at God. What he did to you." I said, "Lady, he didn't do it. This just happened. It's part of life." And she couldn't handle it. She got out of the business.
Huh. Wow.
You know, but I feel, and I try my best to be on an even keel. We work all our problems out at home. We never let things go south. Like I said, we have a different relationship in marriage than a lot of families do, but we're together. we'll always be together. So I just wish people would wake up.
Yeah.
So that's all I got to say.
Very good. Well, Ron, I want to thank you for sitting down to tell your story today, but just as important, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed this. This is a picture of my father and his Navy buddies. This is barracks, I think it was, when I was at Fort Leonard Wood. Picture of me in Vietnam, outside.
That's they're at the beach there?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
These are pictures of where I was stationed. There's no buildings in it, but it's the beach, South China Sea. This is the AK-47 that I had to purchase to fight with. I got it just before Tet 1968. This is me at my job, cigarette in one hand and a pen in the other. This is a picture of me at the Ricky Shai and my R&R in Penang, Malaysia. And that's me with my dog that I rescued. And the other one's me with my dog and rescued. And there's me standing in front of a Jeep. I don't know what I was doing. I was just standing there. This is a picture of me standing on Continental Divide, Cameron Pass, west of Fort Collins, Colorado. This picture is a picture of my wife, Debra. We've been married to be 44 years come January. These are pictures of the wastewater treatment plant south of Fort Collins that I trained in as a wastewater technician for things that the state wanted me to do, pay for. This is schooling I went for. This is a picture of my mother's brother, Cecil. He made these guitars and stuff. Very good luthier. This is the company I went to work for in '87 after being off work for 6 years. It's Chicago, Omaha, Denver Express. This is a picture of my brother's family, my sister on the right and my son on the left.